Continue with the teachings from Victory, Volume 4. We're going to be reading the second Gosho in there. It's called the Four Virtues and the Four Debts of Gratitude. This Gosho actually appears in Volume 2 of the writings of Nichiren Daishonin on page 636. And I'll be reading the entire Gosho rather than what's in the front of the Volume 4. At any rate, the key is that last week we talked about faith, right? Faith was the primary issue involved in understanding the real aspect of the Gohonzon, correct? Okay. The same thing applies this week. The person that this Gosho is written to is Nanjo Tokimitsu, right? Now, does everybody know about Nanjo Tokimitsu? Or yeah.
Yes, maybe.
Okay, what do you know about Nanjo Tokimitsu? You know about Nanjo Tokimitsu? What do you know about Nanjo Tokimitsu? Why am I going to read out of the dictionary about Nanjo Tokimitsu? You don't have any idea? Okay. Number one, can you remember back we talked about treatment of illness or a letter to a sick person? Okay, that was to Nanjo's dad, right?
Yep.
Okay, and we already know that his mom was a lay nun as well, right? His dad and his mom were lay priest and lay nun.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are very devout believers. Nanjo is one of their sons, but not their youngest son. Do you understand? So once again, Nanjo Tokimitsu is someone who met Nichiren Daishonin when he was 7 years old. Okay, and was his disciple throughout the entire course of his life. Okay. And met with great difficulty as a result of that devotion and dedication to the Daishonin, and was willing to risk and sacrifice everything for the sake of his commitment to the Daishonin's teaching and its propagation in the latter day, as Nichiren had suggested it needed to be propagated, right? So before we go into the Gosho lecture itself, which will be on page 636, as I said, but the background will be on page 638 of volume 2. But in the meantime, let me read from the dictionary to give you a full-blown understanding of this family, because this is more than just Nanjo Tokimitsu. This is really a heritage that has occurred within his family unit as it relates to passing on the ultimate the heritage of the ultimate law of life and death. Okay? So understand that also. Last week I almost shed a tear when I talked about take advantage of your youth. You know, there's nothing that you can't do when you have the energy to be able to pursue your dreams wholeheartedly. Youth is the time to try and attack that. It's the time to create that foundation. And what the Daishonin is really going to be talking about in this Gosho to Nanjo Tokimitsu is to help him along, because he's a 17-year-old essentially, okay, whose father has passed away, whose older brother has passed away, and he's now in charge of the entire family as a 17-year-old. Okay, so the Daishonin almost takes on like a fatherly role to give him advice and input and encouragement in this stage of growing up, essentially. He's taking care of his mom and his whole family, and because of their position within the local Japanese, he's the Lord of Ueno now. Once his older brother dies, he's now, not only is he 17 taking care of the whole family, he's taking care of the whole village of Ueno. Okay, all of those people are his people, right? Okay, so let me start by reading on page, from the dictionary, on page 428, about his dad, starting with Nanjo Shichiro Goro, the fifth son of Nanjo Hyoe Shichiro, the steward, pardon me. He was the youngest,
Previous.
oh no, this is Shichiro Goro. This is, I need to go a page earlier, pardon me. Go to page, that's his younger brother that I just started reading about. Okay, go to page, 427.
Yeah.
All right. Nanjo Hyoe Shichiro was his dad, excuse me. A lay follower of Nichiren and the father of Nanjo Tokimitsu, a retainer of the Kamakura shogunate. He governed Nanjo village in Izu Peninsula, Japan. Later he moved to Ueno village in Fuji district of Suruga province. As steward of the village, he was also called Ueno. He married a daughter of Matsuno Ryokuro Seiman, and they had 5 sons and 4 daughters. Sometime between 1260 and 1264, while on an official tour of duty in Kamakura, Nanjo met Nichiren and converted to his teachings, the father. Later, when he became a lay priest, he took the Buddhist name Gyozo, practicing increasing is what that means. In 1264, he became ill and was confined to bed. Concurrently, in the 11th month of that year, at Kamatsubara in Awa province, Nichiren was assaulted and wounded by a party of men led by Tojo Kagenobu, the steward of Tojo village and a staunch believer in the Pure Land teachings. On the 13th day of the 12th month, 1 month after the Komatsubara persecution, learning about Nanjo's illness, Nichiren wrote him a letter of encouragement in which he urged Nanjo to strengthen his faith in the Lotus Sutra without being disturbed by his relatives who still upheld the Pure Land teachings. That's that encouragement to a sick person Gosha I was talking about. It is said that he died on the 8th day of the 3rd month, 1265, and maintained strong faith in Nichiren's teachings until the end of his life, till the end. At that time, his second son, Tokimitsu, was 7 years old, and his second son, Tokimitsu, was 7 years old, and his youngest son, Shichiro Goro, was not yet born. Grieved at his death, Nichiren traveled from Kamakura to Ueno village to offer prayer for his repose. His wife and family carried on the practice of Nichiren's teachings, and Tokimitsu in particular contributed greatly to their perpetuation. So what did that just say? Did you catch that little bit? He was just that kind of in that last sentence or so. What happened with his youngest son, Nanjo Shichiro Goro, who died when he was 16? Yeah, but what was the deal there?
He still maintained strong faith.
Okay.
Even if
His youngest son Shichiro was not yet born. I talked about how old he was when he died, right? So his wife was pregnant with this child, never knew his dad. This young man never knew his dad. Okay? All right, so then Nanjo Shichiro Goro was the younger brother that died, the 5th son of Nanjo Hyoei Shichiro, the steward of Ueno village in Fuji district of Suruga province, Japan, and a younger brother of Nanjo Tokimitsu. His mother was a daughter of Matsuno Ryokuro Seiman. He was the youngest of the Nanjo Hyoei Shichiro's 5 sons and 4 daughters. His father, Hyoei Shichiro, died before he was born in the 3rd month of 1265. On the 15th day of the 6th month, 1280, he and his elder brother Tokimitsu visited Nichiren at Minobu. Because of Shichiro Goro's pure faith and fine character, Nichiren was optimistic about his future. Shichiro Goro died suddenly, however, on the 5th day of the 9th month, 1280, at the age of 16. From letters sent by Nichiren to Tokimitsu and his mother, it is clear that Nichiren was greatly disappointed and grieved by his death. So, what does that tell you then?
he was greatly disappointed.
He faced a lot of difficulty too.
Well, he not only, he faced a lot of difficulty too, but what does that tell you about your practice, about living in this world?
Not easy, huh?
Not only not easy, not guaranteed.
Not
Okay?
guaranteed.
Nanjo Shichiro Goro was a direct disciple of Nichiren Daishonin. Met Nichiren Daishonin. Nichiren Daishonin thought he had a great future ahead of him, yet he still died when he was 16 years old. Okay? Now, he did die upholding faith and having faith in the teaching, as the Daishonin would qualify, just as his father had, resulted in him in attaining Buddhahood in his present form before his passing. But do understand, this qualifies that you don't have until next month, next year, 10 years from now. You don't freaking know how long you have. Okay? So get after it and be sincere about the reality that now is the last moment of my life. Okay? Remember those 3 things that we're supposed to be steadfastly hanging on ourselves every day. This sense of not only obligation, but the need and the necessity to overcome difficulties now in this moment rather than sometime in the future.
Right.
Okay? We don't have forever to show actual proof,
Right.
is my point. Okay, now going to Nanjo Tokimitsu himself. By the way, you're going to read here. He had another brother that died, his older brother. Okay, so after Nanjo Hyoe Shichiro died, Nanjo Tokimitsu's brother is the one that actually became the Lord of Ueno, and then he died too when he was still a relatively young man. And that's why Nanjo took over when he was 16. Nanjo Tokimitsu, also known as Ueno, because he lived in Ueno village in Fuji district of Suruga province, Japan, and became the steward of that village, a lay follower of Nichiren and the second son of Nanjo Hyoe Shichiro. His full name was Nanjo Shichiro Jiro Tairo no Tokimitsu. He began practicing Nichiren's teachings quite early in life. In 1265, his father, an official of the Kamakura shogunate, died, and he lost his eldest brother, Shichiro Taro, in 1274. Okay, so 9 years later. This forced Tokimitsu to assume the duties of the steward of Ueno while still in his teens, only 16, 17 years old. Tokimitsu was an infant when his father met Nichiren and became a follower of his teaching. So he knew him his whole life. He knew the Daishonin his whole life. Upon the elder Nanjo's death, Nichiren traveled from Kamakura to Ueno to offer prayers for his repose. It was then, at age 7, that Tokimitsu is said to have first met Nichiren. All right? In 1274, immediately after Nichiren took up residence at Minobu, this would be after Asado Island then, right? Tokimitsu went to see him again. This encounter seems to have deepened his faith in Nichiren's teachings. This is also when he brought his younger brother. Okay? In 1275, Nikko, later Nichiren's designated successor, visited the grave of the late Nanjo Hyoe Shichiro on Nichiren's behalf. From that time on, Tokimitsu looked up to Nikko as his teacher in the practice of Nichiren's teachings and aided him in propagating them. Don't forget, he's the one that donated all the land for Taisekuji. Okay? Propagation proceeded energetically, especially in the Ueno and Atsuhara areas, and many people converted, which led to what? The local guys that were in charge becoming pissed off and feeling threatened, and that's where the Atsuhara persecution occurred. Okay? All right, so again, Tokimitsu looked up to Nikko as his teacher in the practice of Nichiren's teachings and aided him in propagating them. He did his whole life. All right, he always considered Nikko to be his
Teacher.
mentor, because Nichiren was too busy handling everybody and everything. That Nichiren still had a vertical relationship with him. Do you understand? Propagation proceeded energetically, especially in Ueno and Atsuhara areas, and many people converted. Tokimitsu offered his residence for use as a center of propagation activities, just like we do. This is all the same basis of how you practice correctly. As the number of converts, which included local priests and farmers, increased under Nikko's leadership, official and private opposition increased. During what came to be known as the Atsuhara persecution, Tokimitsu used his influence to protect other believers, sheltering some in his home where they couldn't be attacked. Nichiren honored him for his courage and tireless efforts by calling him Ueno the Worthy, though he was only about 20 at the time. In retaliation, because what's he doing when he's doing this? Yeah, but what's he actually doing in terms of the local reality of where he lives? He's going against the government. Okay, he's going against the people in power to support somebody that they don't want supported. All right? Okay. In retaliation for Tokimitsu's support of Nichiren and his followers, not for any other reason, the shogunate levied exorbitant taxes upon him, left him poor. Okay? His official pressure continued for several years, and the Nanjo family was forced to live in extreme poverty. All the time being, all you got to do for me to stop this is quit supporting Nichiren Daishonin. Walk away from him. Much of his support will walk away. If you do, you're the big thing holding him together. Stop it. And he would not. He refused to cease his support. And that's why the Daishonin wrote him so many letters. Even under these circumstances, and while struggling to raise their 9 sons and 4 daughters. Okay, so his dad had 4 sons and 5 daughters. He had, Nanjo Tokimitsu had 9 sons and 4 daughters. Those were big families. Okay, cost some coin. All right, imagine taking care of that big a family while you're being ripped off for all your money because you're supporting this priest Nichiren. That takes faith. All right, Tokimitsu and his wife Otozuru, also known as Myorin, consistently made offerings to Nichiren, even though they didn't have anything themselves. When Nichiren died on the 13th day of the 10th month, 1282, Tokimitsu attended the funeral ceremony along with such longtime followers as Shijo Kingyo, Toki Jonin, the Ikegami brothers, and Ota Jomyo. Why was that to be able to be the case? Does anybody know? When Nichiren died and had his funeral, where was he? What was he doing? Do you remember? You guys should all know Nichiren Daishonin's life to the point that you know all of these historical key points. Really, at some point in time, you got to know all that. Okay, so what's going on with why is he able to attend the Daishonin's funeral? Where's the Daishonin headed when he died? Where is the Daishonin when he died?
I know that.
Okay, right. He's on his way to the hot springs at, I think, Ikegami or somewhere, right? Because he hasn't been well. He's had diarrhea for 2 years. Shijo Kingyo has been helping keep him alive, but everybody's worried about him. All these guys, Nanjo Tokimitsu, the Ikegami brothers, are all worried about him, right? They're trying to get him out of there. And so what's actually happened, because he's been holed up in Minobu, up in the mountains, in the forest retreat, where there's snow, where there's cold, where there's wind, where there's rain. Nanjo's saying, come on down out of the mountains, man. You're old. Let us take care of you. Okay? So that's what the Daishonin had finally said, okay, I guess I'll try but boy, I'm tired. Boy, I'm old. And it was during this trip then that he finally took ill, and he was on his way. What was going on at Taisekuji at the time? At Minobu at the time. Okay? In Minobu, Nikko in Ikeo has begun to formulate more of a direct relationship with that Lord, whatever his name is, that's the reason why there's Nichiren's Shu. Okay, so there's beginning to be this power struggle between Nikko in Ikeo, which Nichiren is designated as his successor, and Nikko in Ikeo, who is saying some different things and actually securing the support of the resident lord, whoever that was, and I can't think of his name off the top of my head. So let me go on. When Nichiren died on the 13th day of the 10th month, 1282, which would be October 13th. How many of us remember that? I didn't 10 days ago. Attended the funeral along with such longtime followers as Shijo Kingyo, Toki Jonin, and the Ikegami brothers, Ota Jomyo. In 1289, Nikko left Minobu and went to live at Tokimitsu's residence in Ueno village at the latter's invitation in 1289. Okay, so 7 years later, that's when all of this stuff finally erupted. He couldn't take it anymore. He had to get away from Ikeo. He said their slander has taken over Minobu, right? Tokimitsu donated, so Nanjo donated to him the tract of land called Oishigahara, on which the temple Daibo was completed on the 12th day of the 10th month, 1290. This was the origin of the Taisekuji temple. In later years, Tokimitsu became a lay priest and assumed the name Daigyo, great practice. On the 13th day of the 8th month, 1323, his wife died. In the 3rd month of the following year, Tokimitsu built Myorin Temple in her honor, naming it after her Buddhist name Myorin, wonderful lotus. It is thought that this temple had formerly been Tokimitsu's residence. Tokimitsu died on the 1st day of the 5th month, 1332. Nichiren's extant letters to Tokimitsu number more than 30, the largest number among those addressed to any of his followers. So he lived to be from 1260, 40, he lived to be 72 years old. Okay, so he lived a nice long life. And I'll stop there. That's to give you that background. Now go to the background on the Gosho itself that we're going to be reading is on page 636 of volume 2. Pardon me, 638 on volume 2 in background. Nichiren Daishonin wrote this letter to Nanjo Tokimitsu in 1275 at Mount Minobu, where he had taken up residence the year before. Tokimitsu, who had lost his father, who was the steward of Ueno village of Suruga province at age 7. Later, with the support of his mother, Tokimitsu carried on with his father's legacy of dedication as the Daishonin's disciple. At a young age, he took on his deceased father's position both as head of his family and steward of Ueno village. For that reason, like his father, he was also known as Ueno. Hence, this work is also called Letter to Ueno. Tokimitsu was 17 when he received this letter. There's 2 letters to Ueno, right? So that's why they changed the title on this one. Tokimitsu had earnestly been trying to fulfill his obligations as the steward of his village. To help him develop as a leader in his community, the Daishonin teaches him the 4 virtues of Confucian Taoist ethics and the 4 debts of gratitude to be paid in Buddhism. He points out that one who carries out the practice of the 4 virtues will embody all the Confucian and Taoist teachings in his person, and that one who believes in the Lotus Sutra will repay the 4 debts of gratitude. The sutra, which shows uncompromising respect for women and enables them to attain Buddhahood, provides one with the only way that can lead one's mother to Buddhahood, thereby enabling one to repay one's obligation to her. The Daishonin concludes by assuring those that have strong and abiding faith in the Lotus Sutra will enjoy peace and security in your present existence and good circumstances in future existences. Everybody's with me? Okay, so going to the Gosho on page 636, volume 2, the 4 virtues and the 4 debts of gratitude. And don't misunderstand what he's saying here. He's going to start out by talking about like the 3 sovereigns, the 5 emperors, Confucian, and all that stuff, all right? But he's not saying you should start practicing those practices. What he's saying that the merit of those teachings can all be revealed in their 4 primary dictates, which are also tenets of Buddhist practice. Okay? So you don't have to become a Taoist or a Confucian. They're already included if you have the correct understanding and are practicing Buddhism correctly. Okay? Follow? All right, so 636. When the Buddhas of the 3 existences of past, present, and future appear in the world, they all preach. Okay, love the way he says this. Listen to what he says carefully. When the Buddhas of the 3 existences of past, present, and future appear in the world, they all preach the importance of repaying the 4 debts of gratitude. So what did he just do there? He says, this is status quo for all Buddhas everywhere. Okay, they all understand that these are virtuous characteristics of behavior that you must abide by. And he says all twice to make sure that you understand all of them do this. You must as well. He might as well be saying in the same breath, right? And the worthy men of antiquity, who we just mentioned, the 3 sovereigns, we're about to mention the 3 sovereigns, the 5 emperors, Confucius, Lao Tzu, Yen Hui, and the others, taught the practice of the 4 virtues. The 4 virtues are filial piety toward one's father and mother. Everybody understands that, right? 2, loyalty to one's Lord. 3, courtesy towards one's friends. And 4, pity and kindness toward those less fortunate than oneself. Okay? The 4 virtues are, okay, first, being filial toward one's father and mother means that though a parent may act unreasonably or speak in a tone of ill will, one never shows the slightest anger or looks displeased. This kind of reminds me of the way my wife treats her mom. One never in any way disobeys a parent, is always mindful of providing a parent with all manner of good things. And if this happens to be impossible in the course of a day, one at least smiles twice or thrice in their direction. Second, everybody's with me? Mm-hmm. So he's saying, if you can't do anything else, at least be pleasant around your parents. Okay? Second, being loyal to one's Lord means that one never has anything to be ashamed of in serving him. Though it may mean sacrificing one's own life, if it will benefit one's Lord, one acts with a willing heart. For though one's trustworthiness may at first go unnoticed, in time it will be openly rewarded. Okay? Mm-hmm. Third, treating one's friends with courtesy means that although one may encounter them 10 or 20 times in the course of a single day, one greets them courteously as though they had traveled 1,000 or 2,000 miles to see one, never showing them indifference, blowing them off. I see you all, I don't even have to say hi to you. I'm going to walk right by you. We all do that, right? He's saying don't do that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Fourth, treating those who are less fortunate with pity and kindness means that toward those whose circumstances are inferior to one's own or less fortunate, one thinks of such persons as one's children, as one's own children, and shows them consideration at all times, exercising pity and compassion and respect. All right? These then are the 4 virtues. And if you observe them in this manner, you may be called a worthy man or sage. If you pay attention to these 4 concerns, then although you may err in other ways, you will still deserve to be called a good man. If you can follow these 4 patterns of behavior, then although you have never read all the 3,000 volumes of the Confucian and Taoist classics, it will be as though you had in fact read them. Okay? So everybody understands what's happened here. He's writing this to a 17-year-old man, okay, whose father has been dead since he was 7 years old, okay, who's now had to take over the full responsibility because his older brother has passed away as well. All right? And that Daishonin is saying, try to start to view your behavior as something that reflects these kinds of things. All right? So the first thing he's talked about, or the first 4 things are these 4 virtues. He goes, next, the 4 debts of gratitude of Buddhism are, at the bottom of page 636, second column, 1, the debt of gratitude to be paid to one's father and mother. 2, the debt of gratitude to be paid to the ruler of the nation. 3, the debt of gratitude to be paid to all living beings. And 4, the debt of gratitude to be paid to the 3 treasures, the Buddha, the law, and the order. First, with regard to the debt owed to one's father and mother, the 2 fluids, red and white, of the father and mother come together to become your body. You dwell within your mother's womb for 270 days, a period of 9 months during which your mother on 37 occasions undergoes suffering that is close to death. And the pains she endures at the time of birth are almost too great to imagine. The panting breath, the sweaty steam rising from her forehead till it reaches the Brahma heaven. After birth, she provides you with 180 and more measures of milk. For a period of 3 years, you romp around the knees of your father and mother. So when you come of age and take faith in Buddhism, you must, first of all, think of paying the debt you owe to your mother and father. Mount Sumeru is paltry in comparison to the towering debt you owe your father. The great ocean is shallow compared to the profoundness of the debt you owe your mother. You must bear in mind these debts you owe to your father and mother. Okay, everybody's with me? And again, for many of us, certainly for myself, I was not raised in any kind of a circumstance to understand any of this. These are all things that I took on in my later life based on the teaching that I shown it. And my parents both died thinking I was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And my Christian brothers weren't even around. Okay? So, as I talk about Tokimitsu, don't forget when we share these letters that Aishonin is encouraging us to live the same way he's encouraging Ueno, right? So you should be thinking about your own actions and behaviors in regard to what this teaching says your actions and behaviors should reflect. With me?
Yes.
All right. Second, so the first was debt to mom and dad. Second is the debt of gratitude to be paid to the ruler of the nation. From the time of your birth and on, the food, clothing, and other articles, first of all, and all other things you enjoy, come to you through the kindness of the sovereign. Now, what's he mean by that? Does he mean that the sovereign gives you all that stuff? What's he actually referring to? The reality that goes way past most people when they think about their country or the sovereign that they live under, because everybody does in some fashion. Why should you give a shit about the sovereign? Because the sovereign reflects the nature of the nation. And then that nation reflects your security, law structure, availability of food, transportation, justice or injustice, everything, baby.
Yeah.
Really, when it comes down to it, we all think of government. We're all born under governments. And so the government, from the time we're born, somebody's taking care of all this shit. We don't ever think about it. Right? Lights, the nighttime comes and the street lights go on. Nobody thinks about what it took for that to become that way. We don't think that way. But in reality, it's always the sovereign. And a sovereign isn't, again, necessarily a king. It's a governing reality that you always live under as a human being. Okay? Even if it's a tribe. All right? Yeah. There's always a hierarchical process, and the hierarchical process is for the sake of something that's supposedly providing something for everybody else. A leader, a brave warrior, whatever it might be, they're bringing something to the table that gets them promoted. All right? So, second is the debt of gratitude to be paid to the ruler of the nation. From the time of your birth and on, the food, clothing, and other articles, first of all, and all other things you enjoy, come to you through the kindness of the sovereign, or the reality of the sovereign. It is only fitting, therefore, that you should pray that he will enjoy peace and security in his present existence and good circumstances in future existences. You understand? In other words, you're actually saying you're having gratitude for the sake of the circumstance that you're born into, regardless of what that is. You follow? All right. Third is the debt of gratitude to be paid to all living beings. If you stop to consider, you will realize that at one time or another in the past, all men have been your father and all women your mother. Thus, in the course of all the many lifetimes and existences you have lived through, you have come to owe a debt of gratitude to all living beings. They've all been your mother or your father. You're related to them in some fashion. Okay? And since this is so, you should help all of them to attain Buddhahood. All right? Fourth, everybody's with me, right? So the same consideration for your mom and dad you're supposed to have for all living beings, because all living beings technically are your mom and dad. You just don't remember. Okay? Fourth, so if somebody says, why should I give a shit? That's the reason why you should give a shit. Right? Fourth is the debt of gratitude to be paid to the three treasures of Buddhism. If we examine the flower, okay, this is very important. This is where we get into the nitty-gritty of this. Fourth is the debt of gratitude to be paid to the three treasures of Buddhism. If we examine the Flower Garland Sutra, the first sutra to be preached after the Buddha attained enlightenment, we find that it is the Mahayana work preached by the Buddha in his aspect as the thus come one of the reward body. Thus, to the voice hearers, cause awakened ones, and others, it was like daytime to an owl, or nighttime to a hawk. Though they listened to it, it was though they did so with deaf ears or blind eyes. This being the case, though people hoped that the sutra would enable them to pay back the 4 debts of gratitude because it speaks disparagingly of women, it was hardly possible for them to repay the debt of gratitude owed to their mother with the sutra. What did you just qualify? What did that paragraph just talk about?
The place of women in the...
The reality that, taking on first the Flower Garland Sutra, it disparages women.
Yeah.
Therefore, if I uphold this Flower Garland Sutra, there's no way for me to repay my debt of gratitude to my mother. Therefore, can't do the Flower Garland. Okay? Going on. Then and we already know the Flower Garland was number 1, right? Kegon Sutra, right out of under the Bodhi tree. Under the Bodhi tree is actually where it's preached. Okay? Then for the following 12 years, the Buddha preached the Agamas Sutras, which are Hinayana Sutras. And since they are Hinayana works, they accord with our native capacities. In other words, they're not for attaining Buddhahood. They're totally an expedient means. You understand? The Buddha then explained that men must observe the 5 precepts, women the 10 precepts. Monks who teach the law, the 250 precepts, and nuns, the 500 precepts. There are 3,000 rules of conduct to be mastered, but those of us who live in this latter age can hardly be expected to abide by all these rules, and it is hard to repay the debt one owes to one's mother, particularly when these sutras, too, speak disparagingly of women. How so? Qualifying constantly they're not as good as men. They're not equal to men. Nuns are not as good as priests. They've got to do 250 more precepts than 500 versus 250. He's talking about men observe the 5 precepts and women have to observe the 10 precepts. So he's basically saying you're not treating things equally. Again, these do not qualify as something to save your mother. All right? So he goes on. So now we've gone through Flower Garland, Agamas. Now we're to the correct and equal and wisdom. Okay? Which are the next ones, right? Chronologically. In the correct and equal, wisdom and all other sutras that were preached in this period of 40 and more years, women in all cases are in all cases disparaged. Only in the woman born as a man to become a Buddha Sutra. What a name. Only in the woman born as a man to become a Buddha Sutra and the Meditation Sutra do we find passages that describe the possibility of a woman attaining the way. But these speak of the possibility in name only and give no actual example of the prize. Moreover, these are all sutras preached when the Buddha had not yet revealed the truth. Remember, he announces that, right? When he gets to the lotus. In these more than 40 years, I have not revealed the truth. So this is all prior to that. So they can hardly be regarded as authoritative because they're not at the point he's made that declaration. In all these various sutras expounded in the first 40 and more years of the Buddha's preaching life, women are spoken of in a disparaging manner, and they are similarly spoken of in the last sutra. He preached the Nirvana Sutra. So even though part of the perfect teaching is the Nirvana Sutra, it also talks about women or devils. Okay? So he's saying only in the Lotus Sutra do you find the true equality of men and women based on the Dragon King's daughter. Right? If one asks then what sutra enables one to repay the 4 debts of gratitude, I would reply to them that it is none other than the Lotus Sutra, which reveals that women can attain Buddhahood. The 8-year-old daughter of the Dragon King in a reptile form attained Buddhahood, and the Buddha's aunt, Gautami, and the nun Yashodhara Daure are given prophecies of the attainment of Buddhahood. Our mothers are human women. They do not belong to the realms of animals, nor have they the bodies of reptiles. If the 8-year-old Dragon King's daughter can become a Buddha, then what reason is there to believe that our mothers, through the power of this sutra, cannot become Buddhists. Therefore, a person who upholds the Lotus Sutra is repaying the debt of gratitude owed to father and mother. Even if one does not feel in one's own heart that one can do so, one can repay it through the power of this sutra. Thus we know that Shakyamuni, many treasures, and the countless Buddhas of the 10 directions, superior practices, and the other bodhisattvas who emerged from the earth, Universal Worthy, Manjushri, and the other bodhisattvas of the theoretical teachings, Shariputra and the other great voice hearer disciples, and the great heavenly king Brahma, the gods of the sun and the moon, and the other heavenly lords and deities, the 8 kinds of non-human beings, the 10 demon daughters, as well as the great and small deities of the country of Japan, will all, as a shadow follows a form, guard anyone who has firm faith in this Lotus Sutra and remains at all times stalwart and unwavering in that faith. Think of this, never let your mind stray. Be firm in faith at all times, and you will enjoy peace and security in your present existence and good circumstances and future existences. With my deep respect, Nichiren. Now, go back to that paragraph. Okay? Because, so he says, to close, to Nancho, 17-year-old Nancho. Get your shit together and act like a man, don't act like a kid. Okay? Have the maturity of a man, not the maturity of a teenager. But how does he end this? He says, thus we know that Shakyamuni, many treasures, and the countless Buddhas of the 10 directions. Don't forget, all the Buddhas of the 10 directions are on the Gohonzon, whether you can see them or not, right? Superior practices, and the other bodhisattvas who emerged from the earth. Where are they? On the Gohonzon as well. Please answer. Universal Worthy, Manjushri, and the other bodhisattvas of the theoretical teaching. Shariputra and the other great voice hearers. All the people at the assembly, which are all representative of the Gohonzon. So what he's really saying is that the Gohonzon, in that last paragraph, he's not talking about all these extraneous people or characters or influences or entities. He's talking about the Gohonzon will protect you. Understand? Okay, everybody's clear on that point? All right, so now, going to the lecture. Wow. All right. Chapter 2, page 17. We've already read the whole Go Show. I'm going to jump over to page 20 to the point where it says lecture. Wow. I managed to spell that part. All right. I'm still spelling. Pardon me. And I'm just having a hard time here. All right. Wrap your head around a little bit of this history here. Are we all in good shape? I mean, it's good? Okay. The first Youth Division Study Seminar was held 60 years ago in 1952, the year after the Young Men's and Young Women's Divisions were established. All right? Everybody's with me on that? All right? At the meeting, youth were called on to answer 20 questions that had been drawn up on a wide range of topics, including the relationship between science and religion, the fivefold comparison, and the principle of casting off the transient and revealing the true. One speaker was chosen from the audience for each question, with the length of the response limited to 5 minutes. The second Soka Gakkai president, Josei Toda, happily watched the spirited efforts of the young men and women, some struggling with nerves, as they presented their answers and demonstrated the results of their day-to-day studies. When they had finished, he praised them for being so well versed in various subjects. Now, what did you pick up on from reading that second paragraph there? 1952 is what the first paragraph says. This is when this is happening, right? What's happening?
The first youth division.
Youth division are doing what?
They are
Studying profound concepts that entail more than just Buddhism, more than just the Daishonin's teaching. When he talks about the relationship between science and religion, do you think any of the priests were talking about that? Anywhere? No, not in any religion. In 1952, we hadn't made as much scientific progress as we have now. There were still a lot of things that were like,
But there are problems because it was after the war and
and what?
very close from the end of the war, right?
No, this
So
is
it's like
1952. The
yeah,
war's
but
been
it was
over for
close,
seven,
but
8
it's
years.
reconstruction of everything, so
Right?
of period of time when you have to think about what the future will be.
But what the point that, yeah, and that's what I'm trying to establish here, is that from the very beginning, the Soka Gakkai was already thinking out of the box. Josei Toda was already thinking out of the box. Okay? This is not stuff that the priesthood was putting out there. These were not things that youth were being encouraged to compare and to understand and become knowledgeable of.
Religion is passive and they were not, they wanted to be active.
Well, but again, what caused the problems that ultimately the priesthood used to address and say that the Soka Gakkai had become slanderers? These very circumstances were opposed. Do you understand
okay.
that?
So,
You were not allowed to do oko. When you study the teaching, that's the same thing as studying the doctrine. Okay? They don't believe that any layperson is qualified to do that. You're not ordained. What the hell are you studying together for? That's why I talk all this time about okos, okos, okos. That's what they do. They say, come and listen and become inspired by what you hear. But are you encouraged to do anything? Not really.
It's
Support
passive.
the temple.
right.
Support the temple.
They
Yes,
ask for
support the
passivity.
temple.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what they do or don't. Everybody, again, some things are active, some things are passive. You want to determine it from that perspective, you can. But it's really the point I'm trying to make is the fact that where we are today in, 2020, essentially, this whole thing that's been a source of friction between the Soka Gakkai and the various Nichiren schools, okay, has been something that was not something from Daisaku Ikeda that started in 1970. That's what I'm trying to say. It goes all the way back to day one, okay, with Toda thinking out of the box about actually where this was going to go as the Bodhisattvas of the earth emerging. Who ever thought about the Bodhisattvas of the earth emerging? Anybody? No. Okay? Yeah, someday they will. Someday they will. Toda's the one going, they already are. I can see them surrounding me. Okay? That's the difference.
Right.
All right, so when they had finished, okay, so this, I'll go, let me start again. At the meeting, youth were called on to answer 20 questions that had been drawn up on a wide range of topics, including the relationship between science and religion, something that's wasn't being discussed anymore. The fivefold comparisons, everybody understands what that is? That's the flower garland, what we just talked about, versus the agamas, versus the wisdom and the correct and equal, or the correct and equal and the wisdom and the perfect teaching of the lotus nirvana. Okay, that's the fivefold comparison. That was something that Tentai did. All right? You with me?
Yes.
All right. Okay. So and casting off the transient and revealing the true. What is that? Holy shit. Hoshaku Kimpon, baby. Now who was capable of casting off the transient and revealing the true back in that day? Nobody. The priesthood, yeah. When you talk about revealing your Buddha nature or Buddhahood in your present form, priesthood did not believe that was possible. I'll read you this whole thing. Okay. But again, casting off the transient and revealing the true is something that can only be done by the Daishonin according to the priesthood. We cannot do it ourselves according to the priesthood. Only the high priest who has inherited directly the golden utterance.
Yeah.
The golden utterance directly. He's the reincarnation, and he's the equivalent of Nichiren. Okay? So that's all Nichiren Shoshu stuff.
Right.
Okay? And what we're studying now is Soka. All right? And that's why this distinction is being made. He says it was after these, okay. They were all limited to 5 minutes. The second Soka Gakkai president, Jose Toda, happily watched the spirited efforts of the young men and women, some struggling with nerves, as they presented their answers and demonstrated the results of their day-to-day studies. When they had finished, he praised them for being so well versed in various subjects. It was after these comments that President Toda unveiled his famous vision of global citizenship. Now this is a marker that went down that he kind of got his butt kicked a little bit for making this qualification, because this is now 1952. Who's in charge of Japan?
52? Emperor.
No,
No more?
no. The emperor's been moved aside by the Allies
by
came
the
in.
war?
They didn't kill him. This is the only reason he wasn't executed. All the generals have by this point in time spent jail terms, been on trial. They're all killed. Who's really running Japan? The U.S. The U.S.
Yes.
The U.S. They've afforded democracy and so forth, but they still got, Japan hasn't started making transistor radios and shit yet, right? There's no economy there that's like eating up the rest of the world, okay? So they're under the influence of the United States tremendously, okay? So here comes Toda saying this. It's the middle of let me start again. Page 20, second column, last paragraph. It was after these comments at this first study meeting, or Young Men's and Women's Division meeting, the first Youth Division study seminar, After that, he says this, his famous vision of global citizenship. So now he's talking to these young people from this country that has just been defeated by non-Asians, okay? The Japanese have been conquered, which was not supposed to be possible according to everything they ever believed based on the emperor, and that they're all descendants of, he's a direct descendant of the sun goddess, right? He says, this was at a time when the nations of the world were ensnared in the rivalries of the Cold War between the communist Eastern Bloc and the Western democracies. And the conflict between the opposing camps was intensifying. Now, do understand, for the people that were in the U.S., they were already separated by two continents, by two big oceans, from anything that had to do with anything communist. Okay, but in Japan, they're just across the strait from South Korea, from the Korean Peninsula, where there's already been a war, all right? And they're just a little bit further than that. Mao Zedong has blown out Chiang Kai-shek. That's now all a communist country. And post-World War II, so is Russia. But it's not Russia anymore. It's the Soviet Union. They've sucked up all kinds of separate countries, right? And so there's this intense rivalry going on for the minds of men throughout the world, because there's these two forms of sovereign, okay? There's theoretical communism, which was always theoretical because it was never applied in actuality. And then there was capitalism, which is ruthless and destructive if it's not governed in a way that forces some level of humanity, because it's really about haves and have-nots, right? Are you with everything I'm saying? Okay.
Yes.
Anybody disagree with anything I'm saying? Okay, he says, so this is Toda. After this, he says, I still remember his words clearly, President Kate is saying. He says, as for myself, he makes this big declaration at this time in 52. As for myself, I side with neither the communists nor the Americans. Now imagine how wonderful that sounded to the United States people occupying Japan at the time as it relates to the Soka Gakkai and Josei Toda. So if there was some pressure and some question about what is this organization really about, this is where it begins, with the outspoken view of the future of the second founding president. As for myself, I side with neither the communists nor the Americans. I side with the people of Asia and the world. Ultimately, I am a proponent of global citizenship. So that's the first time he's talking about, what is he, when he says global citizenship, what is he really talking about he's a proponent of? Kosen Rufu, the
propagation
the-
of the law.
exactly the emergence of the bodhisattvas of the earth in all countries of the world, rising up, becoming global citizens as it relates to a desire for Kosen Rufu, the peace and pacification of the entire earth, not just an individual country. The Soka Gakkai was then still a small organization, but President Toda was focusing on the question of what kind of values and ideas should be promoted and how to build a truly peaceful society, because they'd just gone through this ragged-ass war that had left them destroyed. Atomic weapons had been used on their country twice. Nothing like this had ever been seen in the world, right? He taught that the youth's stage was the world. The youth's stage was the world, and that their mission was to dissolve the conflicts of opposing ideologies and narrow national interests and unite people all around the globe in the common reality of humanity. His youthful listeners were thrilled by his grand vision. Nobody ever talked like this before Toda started laying all this out. That's what he did. He captured Daisaku Ikeda's imagination. At that meeting, he also said, I will pass on the third presidency to a member of the youth division. If you support the third president, Kosen Rufu will surely be achieved. Declaring that the Soka Gakkai alone offered hope for resolving the problems facing Japan and for opening the way to happiness for all humanity, he called on his listeners to rise to that challenge. The 400 youth who were there, profoundly moved and inspired by his words, affirmed their determination to do so. The mentor making wholehearted efforts to foster the youth, and the youth shouldering full responsibility for Kosen Rufu. This solemn united spirit of mentor and disciple is the starting point of a youthful SGI. During Nichiren Daichonin's lifetime, it was youthful followers such as Nikko Shonin and Nanjo Tokimitsu who, sharing his spirit, rose into action alongside him in his great struggle and opened the way for a new age. When we read Nichiren's writings to Nanjo Tokimitsu, including the 4 virtues and the 4 debts of gratitude, which we will study in this chapter, we can show how painstakingly he devoted himself to fostering the young man and how sincerely Tokimitsu responded to his teacher's earnest encouragement. I'm going to go ahead and try and go a little further here. The importance of one's behavior as a human being. And this is like so key, because there's an important dosho called the 3 treasures. And this has been something in that has always stuck with me, and I realized the profundity of this statement in this dosho on my own many, many, many years ago. And he's going to mention it again here, which made me feel good. It's like, okay, then I wasn't off in left field when I did this. He says, the heart, this is from 3 Kinds of Treasure, the Gosho. It has nothing to do with where we are right now. On page 851 of volume 1, he says, the heart of the Buddha's lifetime of teachings is the Lotus Sutra. And the heart of the practice of the Lotus Sutra is found in the never disparaging chapter. What does the never disparaging, what does Bodhisattva never disparaging's profound respect for people signify? Who can tell me? Anybody, you got this memorized like I do?
Let's go one more time.
Okay. What does Bodhisattva never disparaging's profound respect for people signify? The purpose of the appearance, or the purpose of the advent, in this world of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of teachings, lies in his behavior as a human being. Okay? That's what I said in that one video from a couple years ago. Buddhism teaches you how to be the highest form of human being. That's the end result. That's what Buddhahood is. Okay? So this is the importance of one's behavior as a human being. When the Buddhas of the 3 existences of past, present, and future appear in the world, they all preach the importance of repaying the 4 debts of gratitude, and the worthy men of antiquity, the 3 sovereigns, the 5 emperors, the Chinese philosophers, Confucius, Lao Tzu, Yin Hui and others taught the practice of the four virtues. Bottom of page 21, second column. Nanjo Tokimitsu was born in 1259, the second son of Nanjo Hyoei Shichiro, the steward of Ueno village in Suruga province. Both his father and mother became followers, top of page 22, of Nichiren Daishonin, became followers of Nichiren Daishonin when Tokimitsu was a child. This meant that Tokimitsu formed a connection with Nichiren when he was the age of our future division members. Tokimitsu's father struggled with illness and received letters of encouragement from Nichiren. He passed away in March 1265, having maintained correct and steadfast faith in the mystic law to the very last moment of his life. Tokimitsu was 7 years old at the time. Mourning Hyoei Shichiro's death, Nichiren visited his grave in Ueno village that same year. It is not hard to envision him warmly encouraging the bereaved family, including Tokimitsu, on that occasion. In 1274, when Nichiren returned from his exile on Sado Island and subsequently took up residence on Mount Minobu, the Nanjo family immediately sent him offerings. These were personally delivered by Tokimitsu, who was then 16. That year, his elder brother, Shichiro Taro, had died tragically in an accident, leaving Tokimitsu to take on heavy responsibilities as the head of his family and as the steward of Ueno village. The four virtues and the four debts of gratitude is believed to have been composed in 1275, a year after Nichiren's reunion with Tokimitsu, who had now grown into a young man. He was 17 years old when he wrote this. In this letter, the Daishonin cites the four debts of gratitude from the perspective of Buddhism and the four virtues deriving from Taoist, Confucian, and Buddhist tradition. He does so to teach Tokimitsu, who was still young and inexperienced, the personal qualities and character traits he would need to cultivate as the pillar of his family, a responsible leader of society, and a successor to the mission of propagating the mystic law. Okay? So how does this relate to us? He does so to teach Tokimitsu. So if he's teaching Tokimitsu, he can teach all of us no matter how old we are. Okay? The personal qualities and character traits we will need to cultivate ourselves as pillars of our families and become responsible leaders of society and successors to the mission of propagating the mystic law. Please read it that way. That's the way you should understand it now. That's why you're reading this lecture. Okay? In explaining the four debts of gratitude and the four virtues, the Daishonin consistently focuses on the importance of one's behavior as a human being. It isn't until I changed my behavior as a human being that everything else changed. My faith wasn't the thing alone that changed. I had to change what I was doing so that it was in accord with that faith from a perspective of wisdom. Stop doing some of the things that I shouldn't be doing anymore. So again, behavior as a human being is the basis of everything that you confront in your life every day. Because what has created that? Your behavior as a human being. Mm-hmm. Everything that you deal with is your karma. Your behavior as a human being is what determines that. Your behavior as a human being is whether or not you've got easier karma or more difficult karma. Okay? You created that.
Yes.
He presents the fundamental Buddhist teaching of respecting others and living with gratitude in an easily accessible manner for practice in everyday life. He provides simple, succinct guidance for creating the greatest possible value each day and leading a winning life. Nichiren Buddhism offers invaluable principles for fostering youth who have respect for all people and strive for the happiness of themselves and others. And again, fostering youth who have respect for all people and strive for the happiness of themselves and others. I don't know if any of you have teenagers, but I do. And I got to tell you, we could use some more youth who have respect for all people and strive for the happiness of themselves and others, not just the happiness of themselves. So this is a basic aspect of life that we need to have instilled in our life before we can convey it in a meaningful way to anybody else. Because if we try and convey it to others without having it instilled in our own lives, we're full of shit. Right. We're hypocrites. Okay? So this is the basic building block to becoming a Buddha. You can't teach others how to become a Buddha if you don't become a Buddha. You can never become a Buddha unless you change your behavior as a human being to reflect that advance and to deserve the merit that it includes. Right? Okay, so next week we'll continue on page 22 and we'll finish this guy.
Okay.
Striving to overcome the coldness and indifference in our lives, which we all know we have.
Okay.
Right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.